Hello, women. This is week 9 of Moon Circle 2015, and we are still in the practice and study of the goddess Parvati. And so, I wanted to do for this video is to share my own story of coming to appreciate and work with and understand the energy of this goddess, and as revealed in my own life and my own self. So, and it really is just as the myth tells that I came to appreciate the goddess Parvati in a period of personal crisis. My world was really out of balance and I couldn't seem to find a way out. I'd gotten engaged to my partner Ethan several months prior, and it had felt right at the time, though it's important to note that until Ethan, I had dated mostly women and always imagined that I'd end up with a woman partner. But it was working well with Ethan, and we got engaged. So soon after that, I pretty quickly started to balk against Ethan and against the relationship. And I created this really severe gender-based power struggle with him and felt that, that I, as a woman, was being compromised by this man who I knew on one level I loved deeply and was not actually doing anything to me. But I was having this experience, this reaction at a really cellular level, at a primal level, that something was wrong. And I know now that I had been deeply triggered by the engagement and everything that I thought that meant. And though my conscious mind could think rationally about the situation, there was something lodged in my unconscious mind where I was stuck and out of which I felt I needed to fight and I needed to defend myself. And it came out in all, sorts of ways that I'm just not super proud of, but it was just true at the time that, there's just this, the ways that we would grate on each other and that I would be irritated by the most inane things. Like at one point, while making our bed together, Ethan put his duvet cover over mine. Like we just needed, several blankets to cover the bed. It didn't really matter at all. But he put his on top of mine, and I felt it like it was, some form of domination or something, as if it meant anything at all, which it didn't. But it was every piece of it was so grating to me that, and I fought back in really, sometimes very mean and cruel ways, and sometimes in very subtle ways, just demeaning and diminishing Ethan. So finally, we decided to take a therapeutic separation. And that was really important space in which I was finally able to calm my nervous system down and actually see the belief that I'd been acting from. And it was one of the few things in my life that has come to me in a moment of revelation. I feel like really lucky to have had this experience. I was actually reading a passage from the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And Siddhartha is living and learning from the Buddha, but hasn't quite taken up the discipleship. And one day he stops the Buddha and points out a flaw in his teaching. And the Buddha acknowledges his thinking and logic and says, you're right, that you're very smart. But he warns Siddhartha to be wary of his thoughts, saying, although you may be right, is your suffering less? And it really struck me that the Buddha was offering a method of discerning the quality of our thoughts and our beliefs. Because normally we ask the question, of a thought or a belief, is it true or is it right? And we can really argue those points. And we do, we fight wars over those points. But what's offered in this passage is an alternative filter to questioning one's beliefs. Like the alternative filter could be the question, Does it make me suffer? Does this thought or belief make me suffer? So, reading it this way, I had such clarity that I'd been fixated on this deeply held belief about marriage and commitment and gender. And when I could really take a step back and consider the effect it was having on my life, I could see that it was that belief was causing those around me such pain and causing me to suffer. And the belief that until then I had been, until then it had been unconscious, it finally surfaced, which was I believed there was no way for me to be connected, much less committed, to a man without compromising my own freedom and autonomy. That there was no way to be connected, much less committed, to a man without falling under the arm of patriarchy, really. At least that's the language that my brain knew it in. So, of course, we all form beliefs like this in childhood and over the course of many lifetimes even. And it happens in a moment of duress, of overwhelm or trauma. And these beliefs form to help us orient to and survive in the world. But they shadow the big picture of who we are. So in actually uncovering the unconscious belief, I had a moment of experiencing myself more truly as I am, as someone who is fundamentally already free, whose freedom and autonomy was not conditional, nor able to be impacted by any outside circumstances. And it was during this time then that I fell upon the story of Parvati and immediately connected, because her story is one that demonstrates this new reality that I was waking up to. That it was in fact possible to be fully in my own self and in my own freedom and fully in unity with another being. And in fact, the story reveals that this dual relationality to oneself and to the other, to another, that it's at the very heart and foundation of the nature of consciousness, and thus at the very heart and nature of who we are. And I really experienced Parvati's moment of seeing Shiva in the garden, and where she is seen by Shiva as well, and where she has this momentary experience of the fullness of the goddess that she is, divine counterpart and equal to this divine masculine Shiva. And the kind of pull of destiny or, divine purpose, the fulfillment of dharma in being in that space of unity. So in uncovering my own false belief, I also had this momentary experience of the fullness, the fulfillment of my own self and my heart's desire, which is to know myself in a free and loving way, fully expressed, without feeling like I was having to battle the world to affirm my place in it, which is something I'd felt for a very long time. So this was really a turning point for our relationship, because the consequences of recognizing my own innate freedom as a priori, it's a theological term, like in existing before anything else, was that I also recognized my own freedom of choice. Because before this moment, I'd felt totally bound. I felt like on the one hand, I had no choice but to break up because there was this part of me that was totally triggered and reactive and believed there was no way to preserve my sense of self other than to break up. And on the other hand, I really judged myself for even considering breaking up as if it were a failure or a result of not working hard enough. But on the other side of this belief, like once I could see past this belief, I saw that I absolutely had choice. And to choose either path, to stay or not, would not impact my innate freedom. In fact, the choice comes out of my innate freedom. And this allowed me to finally be able to consciously weigh my choices and really listen for my heart's desire that was speaking underneath, all the kind of triggered reactive parts that had been activated. So I returned to my partner and my relationship, and not with all the answers, but in full confidence that we could choose to move forward with each other from the heart of our own desire and autonomy, and with the intent of unity, rather than just being in reaction to each other, whether or not that meant we were going to stay together or not. So in the month or so that followed, as we were coming back together, I chanted and meditated to the goddess Parvati every day, and imagined myself as the goddess standing in the river doing her practice. And at this point, I had a glimpse of what was possible. So now was really when the work had to start, and I had to do the daily yogic practice of being in relationship with my partner and with myself, of mending the parts that I had wounded, and rebuilding the trust that I had broken, and reestablishing myself in myself so as to be available as a whole person. And I felt deeply connected to this aspect of myself that can remain steady and integrous, holding my own space while at the same time remaining open to this other being. So this continues to be one of my core personal practices for my partnership, but also for my life. And I imagine it's going to be lifelong. I think it's translatable beyond partnerships, to any kind of relationship, and to living in community at large. I think it's one of the mysteries of embodied life, that we're living whole and complete in ourselves, and living as relational beings that do, in a very right way, need each other. So that's my story. And I really hope that there's something useful in that for you, and really interested in hearing more from you about what's connecting and what's making sense and what's coming up. So we'll leave it there for this week, and I look forward to talking with you more. Peace.